If you consider yourself a bit of a techie, you love sunshine, fresh air, and shredding the waves, you are going to want to listen to today's episode. Hi, I'm Sarah, and welcome back to the Midlife Happiness Project. Today, I do not disappoint bringing another really interesting guest your way. His name is Jamey, and he does something, I got to tell you, as cool as surfing is, he's doing something now that makes surfing actually not so cool. This thing he's doing is crazy, and a lot of you probably have never even heard of it, but I will let him tell you all about that. Welcome, Jamey.
Thank you. It's called eFoiling. Um, it kind of stands for electric hydrofoil boarding. And something I had seen in 2017, but I had never, I had never seen this before. And so I saw this thing, a video, and I'll probably link to it with your podcast. But the video was of people or a person riding something that looks something like this. It's called an,
And
oh,
for those of you who are listening and not watching this on YouTube,
uh,
let me just say, first of all, it looks like something from the future, but maybe there's a chance you've seen this if you're driving along the coast and it kind of makes you do a double take. It looks like somebody is standing on a surfboard, but it's like levitating above the water. And it's crazy. It's kind of confused. The first time I saw this, I wasn't even sure what I was looking at.
so
So
So that's a great description. So the video, I first saw a video of somebody doing, if you just Google the words lift introduces eFoil, those three words, lift, L-I-F-T, introduces, and then the word
okay.
eFoil, E-F-O-I-L. You will see when the video I first saw, which was in 2017, it was even before they came to market, they were kind of just showing a prototype saying, this is what we're gonna do. And I was like enthralled, was like, oh, that looks so cool. I want to do that. And um, in 2020, I had like a saved search in eBay for eFoil, and one came up. It was in Florida, and uh, it was a price, like substantially less than new. And I was going, I think I'll take the plunge. And I didn't know how to do it. I told my wife about it, and she goes, well, can't you just do a lesson? And I said, I want to just get it and figure it out. Um, so
I
here's
love that. So you
here's
were all in from the beginning.
Yeah. So there's basically like a front and back wing and a little electric motor and a propeller, and then there's a battery inside the case, inside the
Uh-huh.
board itself, and then there's a wireless hand controller. So it's a Bluetooth connection. So I'm like wirelessly connected to the board, and you can control the speed and shows the battery level, different stats like that. So that was
So
kind of
I got to ask though,
yeah.
is it the technology that kind of drew you to this? Is it kind of the surfing kind of athletic part of it? Is it everything? Like what is it about it that you thought I've never even laid my hands on one, but I'm going to go ahead and buy one?
Well, I think kind of like what you said is like when you see it, it kind of looks like the future and like magic, and I get stopped all the time at the beach when people say like, what is that? And, like I've had people say like, I want to learn, like, teach me how to do, like coming out of the water, they'll have seen me
Right.
on the water and they say like, teach me how to do that. And I say like, okay, we'll do that. Like, can we do it tomorrow or something? Because I'm coming out of the water now. But I've had people just like almost tackle me coming out of the water going, that looks so cool. I want to learn how to do that. Um, so I think that was kind of my first experience was
Right.
that looks so cool. I want to learn how to do that. And they have some videos of how to e-foil, and I watched them and I was like terrible at it. They come in different sizes, and the bigger the board, the more flotation is afforded by the
Okay.
board. And I have a kind of small one. So the bigger the board, it's kind of like training wheels. So I have a small one without training wheels, and it was like trying to like ride a two-wheeler for the first time without training wheels. But for e-foiling,
Right.
a bigger board helps. And I've taught a ton of people, and I use a really big board to do that because it really helps them. Um, so what attracted me
Yeah.
was like it's unusual. It looks interesting, futuristic. like how does that work? Just kind of like the physics of it all. And
Hmm.
then I've geeked out about like, I have different wings and I'm on the Facebook groups for the brands, so I've written, I've gone out of my way, like to San Pedro one time, they had a demo for a brand I have never written before. And I just wanted to go like, well, try that one, like what's it like to, try a different brand that's not really available in our region or something like that, so I've geeked out about, as I said, I'm kind of like, I started off as an engineering major and I still have that. I never worked as an
Right.
engineer, but I definitely like fixing things. I like knowing how things work. And this has really filled that interest in me of just like, how does this thing work? And, if something breaks, it's like I get to fix it or find somebody who knows how to fix it or, ask for advice about this or that or be an advisor too, So all that stuff fills me up. And I know when we talked before this gathering today, you said, I said, like, is this a happiness thing for me? And I find happiness is kind of like that word is kind of like, I think of like happy birthday or something kind of fleeting. And for me, the parts about eFoiling that I really like are, um, I have a buddy that I ride. I know some people that eFoil locally. And so I have a small community of people that do this. And I have one guy that I go out with primarily. And, um, it's like I typically go to his house and we'll drive to the beach together. So we get some kind of before and after
Hmm.
connection time. Um, we get to be on the water together and kind of, just kind of smile and have parallel play on the water. And then we, get to debrief after. We get to, rinse off our gear and chat a little bit along the way. And, part of it's like, how are you doing? And part of it just this sort of, I don't know, I would say it's a connection for the two of us. It's also like connecting with myself to be on the water. My buddy calls eFoiling ocean yoga because you're kind of like in a warrior pose. If you
Yeah.
look back at this picture, it's like they're kind of like standing in a certain, kind
Yeah.
of like spread legs, and there's a lot of adjusting and balancing going on. I wouldn't say it's definitely not a cardio thing, but it's definitely like the certain amount of lifting involved just to get the thing in and out of the water and in and out of the cars and stuff. Um, so what I like about eFoiling is it's like I get to connect with my buddy. I get to connect, go out in the water and um, I say it's like I'm immersing myself in nature. I'm elevating myself above the water. Often we see wildlife. There could be a ton of diving pelicans, for example, or and sometimes like when the fish are around, there'd be like literally like hundreds of pelicans dive bombing and like oodles of dolphins, and it's just like literally just like there's a feeding frenzy and we're kind of near it, and sometimes they'll surprise me, they'll come by me sometimes. And one of my kids, I have three kids and they all eFoil, taught them or they've taught me in a way, some of them are better than me. And I've taught their partners and their friends. So I've taught a bunch of people. So what I like about eFoiling again is I like going out and just seeing our coast from the water. This is like the smallest watercraft, like electrically powered watercraft. It weighs about 60 pounds when it's all assembled. So it's like, and when the battery is about half of that weight, so when the battery's out, it weighs about 30 pounds, and the board and everything else weighs about 30 pounds. So something I can put on the top of my car, put the battery inside my car and my gear, and go out. And it's like the tiniest little personal watercraft. It's very silent. Like so people don't hear jet skis, like loud noises. Doesn't
Hmm.
make a wake. So like there's no boats are going to say like you're making a wake, you're going too fast. There's no wake. So it's like very little noise. It's electric. Uh,
And I like that what you're saying here. This is what appeals to me. Obviously, I've never tried e-foiling. I kind of think it's kind of scary, but um, what I like that you're saying is it's kind of this fusion for you of excitement,
mhm.
but it's also about being very present. It has a meditative quality. It's you with nature, you with yourself. And so it's combining these two things. I think that's kind of unique. Normally, something is usually one or the other.
I think all that's true. And you talked about surfing. I I I have body surfed and boogie boarded. I've never been much of a surfer. One of my kids surfs quite a lot. And um, a typical surf wave in our region lasts seconds. Like if you ride for a minute, it's a long ride. The eFoil
Hmm.
battery lasts for like an hour and 15 minutes. So it's like I'm like riding and surfing and carving, an hour and 15 minutes straight. But I think the part I like the best is like it's every time I go out is different. Oh, it's like I'm not just sitting like I just like going to the beach and sitting there. It's like I get to be on the water and active.
Mhm.
I'm engaged. It feels kind of like play for me.
Jamey, are you doing this every day? I
I
mean, your face lights up.
yeah,
I can't tell if you just came back from eFoiling.
I actually I was
Is
out
this something you do every day?
probably like 2 or 3 times a week, but it's whether like
Okay.
if it's very windy or like it's partly condition dependent. Like that's another thing is some people will e-foil in the morning when the wind is low, and then they'll use
Mhm.
another kind of foil in the afternoon, like one that has a kite or a wing. There's wing foiling and kite foiling. So some people do kind of do different sports depending on the condition. So like when there's low wind and uh, it's a great time to go e-foiling. And if the wind is up, you can still go e-foiling. But if you have a wind version of a foil, which I've yet to try, I know some people that do both.
What would you say to somebody listening to this today who was like, this is crazy. I think I might be on board with something like this. What advice would you give for somebody as a first step? Maybe this person is not quite ready to go out and purchase one. What
Yeah.
would be your advice for just first steps?
Well, there are how-to videos online. So just watching a how-to video, if you just say like
Are you talking YouTube?
YouTube, yeah,
Yeah.
like a
Mhm.
YouTube video on how to e-foil, you could get a sense of what's involved. Um, there are many affiliates for the different brands that do lessons. I do lessons here in Santa Barbara. If anybody wants to go out with me, that's an option. I do my lessons through something called Friends with It's all one word. People that want to kind of rent, it can be renting
Ah,
equipment.
yes, yes.
It's like a person to person or peer to peer rental. So I would say, like, if you just want to start, I'd say watch some videos of people just doing it and having fun. And then you can say, like, and there are people of all sizes, like some people that are quite heavy. Like, I think there's one video with 3 women on one eFoil on a big one. There's a video with a very large fellow, like he probably weighs close to 300 pounds on an eFoil. There's kids like 7, 8 years old e-foiling. So, and people take their little kids, like there'll be a little kid on the front of their board and they're standing up behind them. So it can be for lots of people. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and I'm looking forward to the day when he's old enough to be one of those little kids on the front of the board and then learn himself someday. It's something I look forward to. It's like I don't predict. Like typically, it's dependent on my buddy. He lives really close to the coast, so he kind of says like what the conditions are like, and he likes to go when it's sunnier. I'm only going to go in pretty much any conditions, and so I kind of lean on him and say like, oh, let me know when you're ready, and we'll go out together. And it usually works out to about 2 or 3 times a week, and so it's kind of like the bat phone. He'll call me and say, time to go, and it's like, okay, I'll charge up, and I'll be there in a couple hours. So
This is this is great. And so there's definitely an excitement component. There's like a challenge. You like the technology behind it. I think this is all very relatable for people. What would your wife, if she was sitting here right now, is she aware of just how happy this makes you? Has she really seen a difference?
I think she knows I'm into it. She knows I like to do it. She
Hmm.
encourages me to go. She knows like if I'm doing it 2 or 3 times a week, I'm getting some physical activity in when I e-foil.
Hmm.
And
But I think what you're saying is kind of interesting, Jamey, because I think a lot of people agree that when I pose the question, which is kind of seemingly a pretty straight ahead question, which is what makes you happy or what about a certain activity makes you happy? People often sort of panic a bit and say, "Oh, well, I don't know if this qualifies as happiness." People
uh,
it's hard for people to own that, hey, this makes me happy. Now, they may not know, they may not have given a lot of thought to how specifically it makes them happy. But I think at the end of the day, you alluded to this, you used a term earlier, which is it lights you up.
mhm,
And I think that's kind of sums it up,
uh,
right? It motivates you. You say you know that you're going to be e-foiling later in the afternoon. This is something that you like really look forward to in your day.
yeah,
And you get excited about it. I mean, I think that at its very core is what happiness is. It's distinctly different than being content. Certainly in my mind,
Uh-huh.
we all want certain things in our life. You know, a roof over our head, money in the bank. We like to go out for the occasional dinner or go on a vacation, and that's all fine and well. We can all relate to that. But in terms of like real happiness, I think at its foundation is just what you've said. You want something that lights you up.
Yeah, it does light me up. I think of like I said, there's some things that I pick out that I like, and I think it's mostly like it's a change of pace. It's never the same. I have gratitude for just being like physically fit enough and having the opportunity living near the coast. People can do this in lakes and rivers. One of my kids lives in Portland, and we did it in the Willamette River up there. Different lengths of the river. So it can be used. We've been in Tahoe, done it in the Bay Area. So there's different places to do it. Pretty much any body of water that's at least 4 feet deep could be an eFoil location. So um,
And are you sort of at this point where you're fully invested in eFoil and you're going to take this as far as it can go? Or has eFoiling inspired you to try new things too?
I would say I'm kind of curious about wing foiling. I know some people that do it, but I used to sail quite a lot. And for me, like e-foiling is kind of all the foiling sports, it's the easiest one because you're only dealing with the motor and your balance. Where when you put a kite on it or put a wing on it, um, you become like a sailing foiler. And I think that level of difficulty for transition is significant, and I have yet to take it on. So it's kind of like a time investment too,
Mhm.
and kind of I imagine I'll be pretty bad at it. So again, it's kind of like what what's how badly do I want to do it? I'd say I'm curious, but I haven't taken the literal plunge in terms of branching out.
I mean, how much does an eFoil even cost?
They're quite expensive, and that's like one of the things that kind of turns people off when they ask me at the beach. They'll ask, they're like, "How much does the e-foil cost?" There's a Chinese brand called Weidu, and they're a little under $6,000. That's like the lowest
Okay.
price point. Lift and Flight are the two big brands. Lift has sold about 12,000 boards. Flight sold about 10,000, and I think Weidu is kind of in the maybe 4,000 board range. So there's maybe like 25,000 boards out there in North America, and the cheapest Flight is about $7,000. Cheapest Lift is maybe in that range, but then they do some things to make it less expensive. Like instead of being made of carbon fiber, it's made of fiberglass. Instead of having a carbon mast, it has an aluminum mast. Those things add weight, the bottom line. So if you're carrying it in and out of the water, when you turn, weight makes a big difference. So you could get kind of a high performance board. A high performance
Mhm.
Flight is probably on the order of about $14,000, and
Oh.
kind of maybe like 12,000 for a Lift. This is new. I bought
Mhm.
mine for 8,000 in 2020, and I see them for around 6,000. So they're all expensive, but if people look at like the cost of like a jet ski, they're on
Mhm.
that same price range. A lot of people that you say, I used to have jet skis or I used to have a boat, they go, this is better than a boat. So these things are very simple. There's a motor and a battery and a remote, and that's kind of it. So it's like very simple. It's electric. So there's like literally one moving part. It's like the propeller and the drive shaft, and there's some bearings in there, but very, very simple.
I love, love, love your enthusiasm. You light up when you're talking about this
Uh-huh.
so much that, I mean, this is what this podcast is all about. It's just exploring the infinite number of things that anybody can try if they are curious and they want to challenge themselves and they know what they're getting themselves into. And they just want to bring some excitement and, for lack of a better way of putting it, some happy into their life. And that's exactly what you're doing. Definitely, when people see this, they will think, "Oh, that's great for 20-year-olds that are ripping it up." But I mean, again, Jamey is in his very, very early 60s, and he's carving it up in the water. So if you're interested, seriously, I mean,
And I took
if you get a fraction of the excitement that you get out of it, it's well worth it.
I
Just given it a try. Well, I think typically our audience is, you're listening to this show because you want to get jazzed up, you want to get excited, you want to embrace whatever new challenge, new things are out there while we still can. And I think your story is a really great one. And thank you so much, Jamey, for joining us today. Really appreciate having you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It was good to speak with you, and hopefully I'll inspire somebody, if not to eFoil, to do something else
That is what it's all about.
something that's a bit of a stretch. Like I said, I bought the eFoil not knowing how to do it, and just said I'm going to throw my hat over the fence and figure out how to do it.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you again. You have been a fabulous guest. And to all those listening, again, thank you for joining us. And please, please, please subscribe, subscribe, and subscribe. We want to keep bringing you these shows, and we need you to subscribe to do that. And on that note, thank you again for joining us on the Midlife Happiness Project. We will see you again next time.